Have you ever had an argument with someone, and somehow, no matter what you said, it felt like you were going to lose no matter what? Not because you were wrong, but because the other person wasn't really arguing with you. They were playing something. A game. One you didn't even know you agreed to play. Here's something stranger. You've probably played that same game yourself. Maybe this morning. Maybe with your partner. Maybe with your mother. Maybe with your boss. You didn't plan it. You didn't choose it on purpose. But some hidden part of you followed a script. A script you've been running since childhood, without ever reading the manual. What if almost every fight you've ever had, every awkward silence at a family dinner, every time someone said, "I'm only trying to help," right before making you feel worse, what if all of it followed a hidden pattern? A pattern so common that psychologists could actually name it, predict it, and even end it? That is exactly what one psychiatrist discovered. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You will start noticing it in your own home, tonight. His name was Berne. And in his book, Games People Play, he made a claim that shocked the world of psychology. He said that most human conversations are not really about what they appear to be about. Underneath the words, there is another conversation happening. A silent one. And that silent conversation is the one that actually decides who wins, who loses, and who walks away feeling small. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why certain arguments repeat themselves in your life, again and again, like a movie on loop. And more importantly, you will learn how to finally step out of that loop. Let's start with the foundation of everything Berne discovered. He called it transactional analysis. That sounds complicated, but it is actually beautifully simple. Berne said that inside every single one of us, there are 3 different versions of ourselves. Not multiple personalities. Just 3 natural modes we switch between, often without noticing. The first is the parent. This is the voice inside you that sounds like your mother, your father, your teachers, or anyone who raised or corrected you. When you tell yourself, "Be careful," or "You should know better," or "Always say thank you," that is your parent talking. It can be caring and protective, or it can be critical and harsh. The second is the adult. This is the calm, logical, present moment part of you. It looks at facts. It asks questions. It solves problems without emotional drama. When you calmly say, "Let's look at the numbers before deciding," that is your adult speaking. The third is the child. This is the emotional, spontaneous, feeling part of you. It is where your joy lives. Your creativity lives there too. But so does your fear, your neediness, and your old childhood wounds. When you feel a sudden burst of excitement, or a sudden wave of, "Why does nobody listen to me?" that is your child. Here is the twist that changes everything. In any conversation, you are speaking from one of these 3 states. And so is the other person. The real question is not what words you use. The real question is which version of you is talking, and which version of them is listening. Imagine a husband forgets to take out the trash. If his wife says calmly, "Hey, could you take it out now?" that is adult speaking to adult. Simple. No drama. But if she says, "You never remember anything, do you?" Just like your father, her parent is now scolding his child. And here is what usually happens next. His child does not want to be scolded. So his child fires back, maybe with a sarcastic joke, or sudden anger, or cold silence. Neither of them is having an adult conversation anymore. 2 wounded children are yelling through grown-up bodies. This is why the exact same sentence can lead to peace in one relationship, and to a full-blown war in another. It's not about the words. It's about which part of the mind is actually sending the message, and which part receives it. Berne called healthy conversations complementary transactions. Adult talks to adult, and adult answers. Or parent talks to child, and child accepts it, like a parent tucking a toddler into bed. These conversations flow smoothly, because both people are playing the roles the other person expects. But then there are what Berne called cross-transactions. This is where the chaos begins. Someone speaks adult to adult, expecting a calm reply, but the response comes from an angry parent or a wounded child instead. The conversation instantly breaks. That is the moment 2 people stop talking to each other and start talking past each other. Have you ever asked a simple, harmless question, like, "Where are my keys?" And suddenly your partner exploded, saying something like, "Why is it always my fault?" That is a cross-transaction. You sent an innocent adult question, but it was received by their wounded child, who has been criticized about losing things their whole life. The reply came from pain, not from the present moment. Now here is where the book gets truly fascinating. Berne says most people don't even realize which ego state they are speaking from, or which one they are triggering in someone else. That's why the same argument seems to happen over and over, like watching the same rerun. You are stuck in a loop because nobody involved is fully aware of the pattern. But conversations are rarely that simple. Berne noticed a third, sneakier kind of transaction, one that hides behind the first two. He called it an ulterior transaction. This is when the words say one thing on the surface, like two calm adults chatting, but underneath, at a completely different level, something else entirely is being communicated. Picture a car salesman saying, "This model is excellent, but it's probably a bit too expensive for you." On the surface, that sounds like a simple adult comment about price. But underneath, it is actually a challenge aimed straight at the customer's child, daring it to prove, "I can afford anything I want." The customer, now quietly speaking from a wounded, prideful child, buys the car, not because the adult decided it was wise, but because the child refused to be underestimated. This is why so many decisions in life, which purchase to make, which relationship to enter, which fight to pick, are not actually decided by pure logic at all. They are decided underneath the surface, by a hidden message aimed directly at an old childhood wound. Now, before we go deeper into the games themselves, there's one more piece of the puzzle Berne insisted we understand. Why do people bother interacting with each other at all, day after day, when so many of these interactions clearly hurt? The answer lies in how we structure our time. Berne says every single hour of every single day, you are choosing, often unconsciously, one of 6 ways to structure your time with other people. The first is withdrawal, simply removing yourself, scrolling your phone at a party, or daydreaming during a boring meeting. It's safe, but it earns you almost no strokes at all. The second is rituals, the polite, predictable exchanges we barely think about. "Good morning, how are you?" "Fine, thanks." These give you a small, reliable trickle of recognition without any real risk. The third is pastimes, casual small talk about safe topics, sports, the weather, celebrity gossip. It's a little warmer than rituals, a way of testing whether someone might be worth getting closer to. The fourth is activities, working together toward a shared goal, a work project, a home renovation, a school assignment. This is where a lot of adult life happens, and it offers steady, task-based recognition. The fifth way we structure time is games. And by now, you already know why games are so tempting. They guarantee an emotional payoff, even a painful one, which feels safer than the terrifying uncertainty of true closeness. And the sixth, the rarest and most rewarding of all, is intimacy. This is the one place where people drop the games entirely and speak honestly, adult to adult, child to child, without hidden agendas, without needing to win. Berne says most people spend shockingly little time here, because real intimacy requires real vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like walking without armor. Yet it is the only place where the deepest human hunger, to be truly seen, actually gets satisfied. Something that explains why we even bother interacting with other humans at all, especially when those interactions hurt us. Berne believed that human beings have a biological hunger, just as real as hunger for food. He called it recognition hunger, or simply, the need for strokes. A stroke, in this sense, is any form of acknowledgement from another person. A smile, a compliment, a hug, even an insult. Here's the shocking part. Berne discovered that for many people, negative attention feels better than no attention at all. A child who is ignored when calm, but yelled at when misbehaving, learns something dangerous. Bad attention is still attention. And so that child, now grown into an adult, may unconsciously provoke arguments, drama, or conflict simply to feel noticed. Think about people you know who always seem to create chaos wherever they go. It is not because they enjoy suffering. It is because somewhere inside them, a starving child learned that chaos guarantees a response. Silence, to a starved heart, feels like disappearing. This single idea explains an enormous amount of human behavior. Why some people pick fights before big holidays. Why some employees create unnecessary drama at work. Why some partners bring up old wounds right when things are going too peacefully. Peace, to a stroke-starved mind, can feel oddly unsafe, almost boring, almost like being ignored. Now, here comes the real heart of the book. Berne says that because we crave these strokes so badly, we develop unconscious strategies to guarantee we get them. And the most powerful strategy of all is the psychological game. A game, in Berne's language, is not a fun activity. It is a repeated pattern of hidden transactions that looks normal on the surface, but has a secret payoff underneath. The payoff is usually an emotional reward, like feeling superior, feeling like a victim, feeling justified in anger, or avoiding real intimacy. Every game follows a formula. It starts with a con, an invitation disguised as something innocent. The other person takes the bait, called the gimmick. Then something switches, a switch happens, followed by a moment of confusion, and finally, a payoff, the hidden emotional reward everyone was secretly playing for. That sounds abstract, so let's make it real with one of the most famous games in the entire book. It's called, Why Don't You Yes But? Imagine a friend says, I'm so stressed, I don't know what to do about my job. You kindly suggest, why don't you talk to your manager? She replies, yes, but he never listens. You try again. Why don't you look for a new job? She says, yes, but the market is terrible right now. You offer another idea. Every single time, she says, yes, but... At first, this looks like she genuinely wants help. But watch closely. She does not actually want a solution. If she wanted a solution, one of your 10 suggestions would have worked. What she actually wants is to prove that no one can help her, and to watch you struggle uselessly trying. The secret payoff is the comfort of feeling like a permanent victim, someone entitled to sympathy, someone who never has to take the frightening step of actually changing her life. Have you ever played this game on either side? Have you ever offered someone 10 different solutions, only to feel strangely exhausted and unappreciated afterward? Now you know why. You weren't actually being asked to solve a problem. You were being cast in a role, without ever agreeing to audition. Berne describes another game called, If It Weren't For You. A woman complains that she never got to travel or pursue her dreams, because her husband always held her back. On the surface, this sounds like resentment. But Berne noticed something curious. Many women playing this game secretly chose partners who they knew would say no. But because deep down, they were terrified of trying and failing on their own. Blaming him was safer than facing her own fear. The husband becomes a convenient excuse, and the marriage quietly depends on that excuse remaining true. Then there is a darker one, called, See What You Made Me Do. A man is deep in concentration, working on something important. His child interrupts him. Startled, he messes something up and shouts, See what you made me do. On the surface, it looks like the child's fault. But Berne points out, this reaction gives the man a hidden reward. It lets him avoid blame for his own mistake, and it teaches everyone around him to leave him alone, which, secretly, is exactly what he wanted in the first place. Perhaps the most intense game in the book is called, Now I've Got You, You Son of a Gun. Imagine someone finally catches another person making a small, honest mistake, and instead of simply correcting it, they explode with disproportionate anger, almost gleeful anger. That glee is the giveaway. They weren't upset about the mistake. They were thrilled to finally have proof, evidence they could use to justify anger they had already been storing for a long time. There's also a quieter, sadder game called Kick Me. Some people unconsciously behave in ways that invite criticism or rejection, again and again. Why would anyone want to be rejected? Because being rejected, painfully, confirms an old belief they've secretly held since childhood, something like, I always mess everything up, or, people always leave me. Strange as it sounds, being right about your own suffering can feel safer than the unknown risk of being loved. By now, you might be feeling something uncomfortable. You might be recognizing yourself or someone close to you in one of these games. That discomfort is actually a very good sign. It means you are waking up. Berne explains that these games are not limited to arguments. They appear in marriages, in workplaces, in friendships, even in parties and casual social gatherings. He describes party games like Ain't It Awful, where a group of people bond, not over joy, but over shared complaining, taking turns competing over whose situation is worse. It feels like connection, but it is actually shallow closeness built entirely on misery. There's also Uproar, a game usually played between a parent and a teenager, or between spouses. One person picks a small issue, deliberately escalates it into a loud argument, and storms off. The secret payoff? Avoiding closeness. Slamming a door is often safer than admitting, I feel scared of how much I need you. And then there's a workplace favorite, one you have almost certainly witnessed, called I'm Only Trying to Help You. Picture a manager who constantly offers advice to an employee, advice the employee never actually asked for, and advice that somehow never quite works. On the surface, the manager looks generous, even self-sacrificing. But watch what happens when the advice fails. The manager gets to say, well, I tried my best, some people just can't be helped, and quietly collects a familiar, comfortable feeling of superiority. Meanwhile, the employee gets to say, see, nobody can actually help me, and collects their own familiar feeling of hopelessness. Both people walk away with their secret payoff. Nobody actually solved anything, and strangely, nobody really wanted to. Why do people do this to themselves? Why choose familiar pain over unfamiliar peace? Because, Berne explains, most of us are unconsciously following something even bigger than a single game. We are following a life script, a story about who we are and how our life is supposed to unfold, written mostly in early childhood, based on the messages we absorbed from our parents. If a child constantly hears, you'll never amount to anything, or you always need someone to take care of you, that child may spend decades unconsciously proving that message true, simply because it feels familiar, and familiar feels safe even when it hurts. This is the most important idea in the entire book. Most human suffering is not caused by bad luck. It is caused by invisible, outdated scripts, running quietly in the background, scripts that were written by someone else, a long time ago, when you were far too young to question them. So here comes the question that actually matters. If we are all secretly running these scripts and playing these games, is there any way out? And this is where games people play becomes less of a warning and more of a gift. Berne says awareness is the first and most powerful tool. The moment you notice, wait, I think I am playing, why don't you, yes, but, right now, the game instantly loses much of its power. You cannot be fully hypnotized by a magic trick once you know how it's done. The second tool is learning to respond from your adult ego state, on purpose. Instead of reacting instantly with old childhood wounds or old parental scripts, you pause. You ask yourself calmly, what is actually happening here, right now, today? That single pause can break a pattern that has repeated itself for 20 years. The third tool is learning to get your recognition, your strokes, in healthy ways, instead of through drama. This means asking directly for what you need. Saying, I miss spending time with you, instead of picking a fight to force closeness. Saying, I need encouragement right now, instead of unconsciously creating a crisis just to be noticed. Think about how differently your relationships might feel if instead of testing people to see if they care, you simply told them what you needed in plain, calm words. It feels terrifying the first time. It also, almost every time, works better than the game ever did. There's a simple daily exercise hidden inside this book, even though Berne never spells it out as a checklist. Whenever you feel a strong emotional reaction rising in a conversation, ask yourself 3 quiet questions. First, what do I actually want right now in reality? Second, is this reaction coming from something happening today, or from something that happened years ago? Third, if I said this calmly, from my adult, instead of reacting, what might happen instead? Just asking these 3 questions, silently, in the middle of a tense moment, is often enough to change the entire direction of a conversation. And the fourth, perhaps the most freeing tool of all, is learning to recognize your own life script and consciously choosing new pages. You are allowed to rewrite the story. The version of you that formed at age 7 does not have to be the author of the rest of your life. Imagine, tonight at your dinner table, someone says something that usually triggers you instantly. And instead of reacting the way you always have, you pause for 1 single second and you silently ask, which ego state is speaking right now, theirs and mine? That 1 second of awareness can be the difference between another repeated fight and the very first real conversation you've had with that person in years. This is the true power of Eric Berne's work. It does not simply describe human behavior from a distance. It hands you a mirror. And once you see the games clearly, in your marriage, in your family, in your friendships, in your own mind, you get to choose, maybe for the very first time, whether you keep playing them. So here is the real question this book leaves you with. Not, which games do other people play? But, tonight in your own home, with your own words, which ego state do you want to speak from? And which script are you finally ready to close, so you can begin writing something new? Because the moment you become aware of the game, you already stop being only a player in it. You become something far more powerful. You become the author.